Turn to number 77. I hated to break up that fellowship there, but if we don't get John Welsh up before 3 o'clock, we'll never get him up. Oh no, you're not playing today, that's right. No, yeah, tomorrow. Number 77. And after this, Brother John from Peterhead will come and lead us in a word of prayer. Father, we love you, we worship and adore you. Glorify thy name in all the earth. Glorify thy name. Glorify thy name. Glorify thy name in all the earth. Jesus, we love you, we worship and adore you. We glorify thy name in all the earth. Glorify thy name. Glorify thy name. Glorify thy name in all the earth. Spirit, we love you, we worship and adore you. We glorify thy name in all the earth. We glorify thy name. Glorify thy name. Glorify thy name in all the earth.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for good times like this that we're able to spend together. And we pray for all the activities which went on throughout the day to make this happen today. We pray for those who have opened up your word to us this day, and we pray for John as he comes to open up your word. We pray you'll give him a ready recollection of the things that you prepared. Heavenly Father, thank you for your Son, and thank you for all the things you have done in our lives. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. Please remain standing, and let's sing number. Hold on a second. Number 716, 716. Sing to me of heaven, sing that song of peace. From the cords that bind me, it will bring release. Burdens will be lifted that are pressing so. Showers of rain, blessing, Lord, my heart will flow. Sing to me of heaven, let me fondly dream of its golden glory, of its sparkling gleam. Sing to me when shadows of the evening fall. Sing to me of heaven, sing the songs of all. Sing to me of heaven as I walk alone, dreaming of the comrades that so long have gone. In a fairer Satan among the angels known. They are happy as they sing that old sweet song. Sing to me of heaven, let me fondly dream of its golden glory, of its unsparing gleam. Sing to me when shadows of the evening fall. Sing to me of heaven, sing the songs of all. Sing to me of heaven tenderly and low, till the shadows o'er me rise and swiftly go. When my heart is weary, when the day is long, sing to me of heaven, sing that old sweet song. Sing to me of heaven, let me fondly dream of its golden glory, of its unsparing gleam. Sing to me when shadows of the evening fall. Sing to me of heaven, sweetest songs of all.
Amen. Please remain standing. And let's sing number 853. First of all, mark in your songbooks number 869. 869. We'll sing this after John's lesson. Looking forward to John bringing us the lesson. I have John for years. He said to me when he came in, last time I saw you was 4 stone ago. That's what he said when he came in. But I'm looking forward to that. Ron is going to introduce John to us before he comes up and gives us the lesson. But first we'll sing number 853. With John's verse being about obviously going to be with Christ at the end of this life. That's why we've chosen these songs to prepare our minds for the thoughts that he's going to bring to us when we all get to him.
Sing the wondrous love of Jesus, sing his mercy and his grace. In the mansions bright and blessed, he'll prepare for us a place. When we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout victory. While we walk the pilgrim pathway, clouds will overspread the sky. But when traveling days are over, not a shadow, not a sign. When we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout the victory. Let us then be true and faithful, trusting, serving every day. Just one glimpse of him in glory will the toils of repay. When we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout the victory. When we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout the victory.
Good afternoon. And I was asked by Graham to introduce John last week, and I really don't know what to say because I never done any introduction to any speaker before. So I really have to bring my best blue trousers with me to introduce you to the best green swinger in the as per I've met John like 11 years ago, 2006 or 2007, and that's my first 3 months here in Scotland, and I think it's the first 3 months I came here, and they were the first church family I met here in Scotland, and so is my family. When they came over from the Philippines, Castlemilk was our first church when we were on that side of when we were still in Rutherglen, and from there on you can probably see what great works they have done in Castlemilk. And I heard John preach so many times as well in Castlemilk, and they were the first one who really tasted the Filipino barbecue. So if you haven't tasted yet, we're having our own family barbecue in April. So you're invited. And John has really have done so great works in Castlemilk, and you should have seen the fruit of their hard works in Castlemilk. It's just so happened we moved in Baileystown that we end up moving as well in Cumbernauld. So I won't take this too long, and I'll give the floor to John.
Thanks, Ronald. You know, I've never forgiven you for moving away from Castlemilk, especially not now that you're wearing blue trousers either. Wait a minute. And I can't believe it, live on YouTube. My goodness. I sent a link to my wife. So back when she hears. But it's good to be here. This is actually the first ever time I've been to a men's day, let alone preached at one. And it's been really, really good seeing lots of old faces and old friends, seeing some new faces. It's been good to see you as well, Ronnie. But it's been really, really nice to be here, and I'm grateful for the invite. So I hope I can do your choices of preachers justice and say something that will, you know, gladden your heart and ring in your soul for a little while and help you along the way. And it's a really good choice, I think, anyway, of things to speak about. How great thou art. God is great, isn't he? Isn't he just amazing? Isn't he wonderful? And if we started at 10 o'clock in the morning and spoke about all the wonderful and great things of God, we'd be here to 10 o'clock the next morning and the next morning, and we would never exhaust how great he is. But to put it down into that song and choose the stanzas or the verses, I think that's really excellent. How great thou art. What a song. Or how great you are, is what I'm going to say, right? You might think, well, drag him out and stone him. It's how great thou art. As Michael says, it was written in Swedish. They didn't know what thous and these were. So I'll say you know, modernise it a wee bit. But we're back to the old guys. The old guys started and the old guys ended. On the old guys. But as you read the lyrics of the song, and read the lyrics of the song, read them out loud and take out the these and the thous. Say the you and are, right? Just try it at home or even sing it like that. You can, as you listen to the lyrics, you can sense the incredulity and the amazement and the sheer wonder of the author as he writes and pens the song, at just how amazing, how wonderful, and how awesome the God whom he's addressing. He hasn't really got a full grasp, but he does with what little he has, and it'll be a lot more than what I have, that's for sure. But what little he has, he tells us how wonderful God is. And you can sense his grasping at the very boundaries of his language, the English language, trying to express this awesomeness of God. O Lord my God, when I in awesome wonder, consider all the worlds thy hands have made. I see the stars, I hear the rolling thunder, your power throughout the universe displayed. And then he says there in the third verse, and this is the one that does it for me. And when I think of God, his son, not sparing, sent him to die, I scarce can take it. I can hardly believe it. says the author. I can hardly believe it. I scarce can take it in that on the cross, my burden gladly bearing, he bled and died and took away my sin. Isn't that just wonderful, tremendous, exciting, exhilarating news? And you did a tremendous job of explaining that. But the author isn't finished yet. Then what happens after he's proclaimed the greatness of God? What does he then do? And Michael alluded to this as well. He responds to his own realization of who God is. He says, and he just can't help himself. He says, then sings, not my voice, but my soul. The very depths of his being, crying out to God, then sings my soul, my Savior God, to you. How great you are, how great you are. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to you. Oh, how great you are. And then we get to the last verse. When Christ shall come with a shout, not a whimper, a shout of acclamation, and lead me home. Oh, what joy. What joy. Joy like I've never experienced before in all of my existence. What joy shall fill my heart. Wow. Imagine being able to sit and write something like that. Imagine being so connected and tuned with God to be able to say that. Isn't it wonderful? And Graham, we're speaking to Graham there behind the curtain. The Iron Curtain. And he says, yeah, we're talking about the different topics. He says, you've got the, what was it again? What's my topic? Praise through exaltation. I says, yeah, I saw that. He says, it looks nice in the paper. I says, yeah, I'm not preaching on that. I will say something about that. We'll allude to that, of course, right? That comes out. But for me, what the verse actually says, or at least to me, right? You may have saw another view, but it speaks to me of a journey, a process, a journey that comes to a joyful and glorious end. We've all been on journeys, right? Everybody in this room has experienced a journey one way or another. Whether it's you've been on holiday somewhere, you've had 2 weeks in the sun, and then you're making your trip back, right? Or maybe it's because maybe you've been on a business trip or something like that. Mark was mentioning earlier. He's going to Germany next week. Is it next week? Lucky you. And you've been on a business trip and then you just can't wait to get home, right? Or maybe sometimes it's just been on a stinky bus or a crammed full train. Oh, or in a car on the motorway. I don't know why they call it a motorway. They just call them car parks nowadays. Nose to tail, can't move. And I just get agitated thinking about it. It drives me insane, that. It really does. But what's the thing that brings pleasure to that? Is the getting home at the end of the journey, isn't it? The sense of relief, the sense of joy, the sense of happiness. Throw yourself back into your lazy boy, flick up the chair like that, legs up, and you shout to Janet, Janet, a glass of juice, please. And this is the same every night. And sometimes more than once per day. She goes, oh, but you're a grown man. Go and do it for yourself. You're not a useless, hopeless waste of space, are you? And I go, just get me the drink, will you? And it goes on and on like that for 10 or 15 minutes. This jousting, and I always get my drink. And I says, look, she says, don't speak to me like that. She says, just pretend that I'm Annette. That's Annette Barright, very lovely lady. Adam will testify. I says, aye, okay, just shut up, Annette, then, right? Just shut up. Call you Annette if you like. I'm not going to be any nicer to you. But it's great when we get home and we relax in that chair and it just feels fantastic. What a sense of relief that it is to finally be home after that long trip. And regardless of the journey, right? Regardless of whether it's a business trip or a holiday or whatever it might be, we never arrive at our destination without some sort of obstacle or bump on the road, right? It never goes plain smooth. Never. Never, ever, ever does it do that. A couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago maybe, Janet and I went to Paris. And I hate flying, right? I hate all that stuff at the airport and all this. Did you pack your bag yourself? No, I left it at the bottom of the street and I had a bath and Frank Sinatra and Elvis came and packed it while I was in there. Of course I packed it myself. So because of that, I take ages getting ready. I don't want to get out of my bed and we missed a flight. My goodness. And Janet was not very forgiving, shall we say. She gave me bellises. But we got there and it was all good in the end. But the point is, you might miss a flight, forget a passport, take a wrong turn, lose your possessions, have your money stolen, whatever it might be. There's always bumps on the road in every journey that you take, right? That's an absolute fact, no disputing it. And so we bear this in mind when we consider the journey that we're on. And here's one of the greatest journeys of all time, perhaps the greatest, who knows. In Exodus chapter 3, we start, in Exodus chapter 3, Moses saw something that caught his eye, didn't he? What did he see? He saw a burning bush. And right there, you know that this didn't happen in Cumbernauld, because if anything was on fire, it would have been a car in the middle of the dual carriageway getting burnt out, right? So we know it's not in Cumbernauld. But something piqued his attention, not only about the bush being on fire, but the fire didn't burn the bush up. So he went for closer investigation. What's going on here? What's all this about? And he moved closer. A voice, the voice of Yahweh, speaks to him. He says, Moses, take off your sandals. The ground you're standing on is holy ground. And he says to Moses, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers. God says, not in these exact words, but definitely with this sentiment. He says to Moses, look, I want you to go and lead the people out. I want you to go and take them from their oppression. I want you to lead them on a journey, and I want you to get them home. I want you to take them to their new home. A new home that flows, a land that flows with milk and honey. The cry of the Israelites, said Yahweh, has reached me. I have seen the Egyptians and how they are oppressing them. So now I am sending you to Pharaoh to tell him to let my people go. What did Moses say? Moses says no. Moses says no. What am I supposed to say to them? But God said yes. Tell Pharaoh that I am the Yahweh God has sent you and is telling you to let my people go. So Moses goes up to Pharaoh and he says, the I am has sent me. He saw the oppression of the people and he says, let the people go. And what did Moses say? Moses says no. But what did God say? God says yes. And he sent plague after plague after plague, which culminated in the death of Pharaoh's firstborn because of his arrogance, because of his hubris, not only his firstborn, but the firstborn of all the people in the nation. It could have been avoided, right? But no. And you let the people go. Then you approach the shore of the Red Sea, the foaming turbulent waters, saying to the people, you shall not cross. No. But what did God say? Well, God reached down with both hands and ripped its jaws open and screamed down its throat, yes! And the sea opened and the people went through to the other side. And then they arrived on the threshold of the wilderness, brooding, barren, threatening, hostile. The wilderness says no, but God says yes, and the people crossed. And while they were in the wilderness, hunger says no, but God said yes, and he fed them manna and quail. And thirst says no, but God says yes, and Moses struck the rock and the water flowed so that they could drink. And after a while they arrived at the threshold of glory and greatness. They arrived at the city of Jericho. And Moses says, well, let's see what we're up against here, right? And he says to the people, let's get some, was it 12 spies or 10? 12, wasn't it? Aye, 12 apostles, 12 spies. How can you forget? So he sends out the 12 spies. He says, go and check it out. And what did the spies say? The spy says, no. The people that dwell there, they're big guys. There's no way we can take them down. They're strong. Their cities are fortified. They're very large. We've no chance. No, we're not going in there. But what did God say? God says, yes! And the people of God, at the command of God, marched around the city of Jericho. And the blast of the trumpet went up. The cry went out. And the people went in as the walls came down. And the people were home. They had their new city. And they slew everything in sight at the command of God. Men, women, children, animals, everything. Cleansed the land. And the people had a new home. They had arrived. God led them home. Egyptian oppression was a thing of the distant past. All of the obstacles in the desert of sin, as we call it, forgotten. Oh, what joy filled their souls. What a story that is it not? I love that story. And I've told it many, many times like that. So, Adam, you've probably heard it, you're bored. But what an ending as well. But it's not just a story, is it? It's an actual event that took place. And it's not just a story that's out there unconnected with us. It's our story. We relate to this because we use it time and time and time again. And all of the things that go on in that journey as metaphors for our own journey in Christ. Isn't that right? The obstacles that met, do we not meet obstacles on the road? Aren't we trying to get home like we delivered like they, and so on? So we use it as a metaphor. It's our story as much as it is theirs. We want to get home. We want to get home as Christians. What would be the point if there was no end to all of this? I mean, it's pretty good, right? But when it gets to the end, when you get home, oh. And with all journeys, it's never easy. Obstacles at every twist and every turn. Our enemy, the devil, prowl around us like what? A roaring lion, waiting, waiting, waiting. Boom! And another one bites the dust. Another one is devoured from a number. When will this stop? He is, that is the devil, as Paul says, the God of this world that we live in. He is the God of it. 2 Corinthians 4:4. The God of this world has binded the minds of unbelievers to keep them from seeing the light of the gospel and the glory of Christ. The glory of Christ, who is the image of God. And John said, I think it's John, 1 John, chapter 5, I think. I could be wrong. But John says that the whole world is under the control of the evil one. You won't get a bigger obstacle than that, for pity's sake. The world that is here, that is in view, is not the planet upon which we ride and have our being, right? In Genesis chapter 1, God made the world. Genesis chapter 1, verse 31, he says, he saw everything that he made, and what did he say? He said it was good. So it's definitely not that world that Satan is in control of. Nor is it the people who live in the world, right? Because as Enoch says in John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son. So that's not what's in view here either. So what is in view? What is this world that the devil rules in and moves in? This world, and this could take a bit more explaining, but we're going to cut to the chase with this. This world is a system or order of things created as a mental construct by human beings that simply says to God, you're not wanted in here. Goodbye, and the door is firmly closed in his face. The system of order of things where God is excluded. Recreated worlds at the hands of human beings where God is excluded. And there is no field of human experience, no field of humanity where this is not experienced. And again, Michael alluded to it. What did he say about the scientists when they look at the creation in the universe? 16,500 million light years in diameter. And they say, yeah, a spark happened in space once and it all just went in a big bang. Whatever. You see how all of science says, God? No, this mental construct where God is excluded. That's what the world is. And as I say, no human experience is untouched by it. It's in education, it's in politics, it's in law, it's in healthcare, it's in defense, it's in leisure, it's everywhere you look. The whole world, under the control of the evil one, has excluded God. This world, this system or order of things where God has no influence, no sway, no authority. This is a rebellious and dangerous world. It's all around us. It's everywhere. The world has gone crazy, right? I mean, it really has, hasn't it? I mean, I remember thinking back in the 80s when, what was the thing? I don't remember, but I think, the world's went mental. Fast forward 20, 30 years, you would never believe the things that you read in the news now. It's mental. And why do you think that is? Because it's under the control of the evil one. And they spout their bile at us everywhere we go, telling us, no, no, no. It's like a fog. Jim McGuigan talks about it quite a lot. He says, the world is like a fog that envelops us, covers us, and we're breathing it in every day. The influence of the world telling us to say no to God. We cannot escape it. Jesus said of this world, right? John 16:33 says, in this world, he says, you will have trouble. He says, you're going to have trouble in the world. Oh, well, of course you are, because the devil rules it. So trouble is inevitable, he says. But what does Jesus say? Jesus says, yes, you will have trouble. Sure enough. But be of good cheer. For what? I have overcome the world. I have overcome the world. His purpose is to seduce us, to lure us, to drive a wedge between God and its people. Jesus says of this world, even though it's under the grip of the evil one, it will cause you trouble. But cheer up. I've overcome it. I have overcome it. Our sin, which is really a result of the world. Now, the world started, in a sense, because Adam and Eve sinned, right? Introduced rebellion into the garden, rebellion into humanity, and it spread like wildfire and a horrible cancer. And God brought it to head in Genesis chapter 6 with a great flood, and hit the reset button and started all over again. So bad was the problem. The thoughts of men were evil in their hearts all the time. Imagine living in a place like that. We're not quite there yet, but it's not that far away. This world that we created from our sin comes back and haunts us and encourages us and lures us into sin again. It's a circular process. It's like it never lets go. It's like a bulldog with a grip in your leg. You look at kids in the playground. What age are they? 5, 6 years of age, and what are they doing? Someone takes the ball away from the guy, says, that's my ball, and he smacks him in the mouth. Why do we do that? Where did they learn this stuff? The fog of the world that envelops them is teaching them that. Teaching them to do all the wrong things since they're that height. That's what we're up against. It has a grip of us. And you know how it goes. You know how it feels. You know what it does to you. You've seen its ugliness. You've seen its destructive power. It constantly tells you, no, no, no. But God says, yes, in Jesus Christ, through Jesus Christ, as Jesus Christ, he says, I have overcome it. I have overcome it. Really? I mean, I know you're sitting there thinking, and you're looking at your life and you feel, is this overcoming? This? Taking one beating after another? And I don't mean so much about losing your job or not getting the nice car that you wanted. I mean, that's bad enough. But I'm talking about sin getting a grip of you, smacking you over the head senseless sideways. You think, is there going to ever be an end to this? This is overcoming. How is this overcoming? This is how we feel about it. And that's the problem right there. Why do we allow our feelings to get in the way of anything? That young man spoke a tremendous lesson about how Jesus saves us and how Jesus deals with sin. What's feelings got to do with that? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. We allow our hearts to rule our heads with the knowledge of the truth that God has saved us from our sin, and it's irrelevant. I did say that, and it's true. It's irrelevant. But our hearts, with the world, join together, join forces with sin, and they say a collective no. No, you shall not pass. You will not get home. You will not get around me. But what does God say about your heart that condemns you? 1 John 3:20. If our hearts condemn us, we know that God is what? Greater than our hearts. So it doesn't matter what your heart feels or thinks. God is over that, is greater than that. He condemns your feelings and thoughts of weakness and uselessness and all that rubbish that goes on. And he says this. He says this because your sin says no, but God says yes. Because your sin, as that young man said, and rightly so, is a done deal. Listen, if you leave here with nothing else today, all those lovely sermons and wonderful words that you heard from start to finish, leave with this one thing. And I don't mean that sounds arrogant as if I'm saying it, but it's not. But it's true nevertheless. Sin is a done deal. Don't let it harm you any longer. Don't let it dictate to you any longer. Don't let it stop you praying. Don't let it stop you preaching. Don't let it stop you doing the right thing, even though it has a grip of you. It's a done deal. God is taking care of it. The world will say no. Your heart will say no. Your sin will say no. The sin is a done deal. God says yes, yes, yes. And how can we believe that? How can we know that this is true? He said it. Because the cross says so. The cross says so. Jesus was hanging on a cross, right? Picture this. His face strewn with spit and sweat and blood. His lungs gasping and burning for the last ounces of air that he can get to keep himself alive, pushing himself up in those nails with the bruise and pain and piercing and blood. Agony. The air around about him is toxic, with people hurling abuse and deriding him. He said he's going to destroy the temple. Well, come on down then. And what does he say? What does he say to the baying mob through the pain and the blood and the sweat and the agony? What does he say? Father, forgive them. They don't even know what they're doing. Father, forgive them. Forgive them. Forgive them. This is what he said while hanging on a cross in that situation. Isn't that remarkable? Isn't that, if somebody walks by and puts a wee scrape in my car, I want to get in. I'm just going to slap him. But here's Jesus on a cross going through all that, and he says, forgive them. What does that tell you about him? Now, I know Jesus didn't say this word for word on the cross, but the biblical witness bears this to be true. Even in the Old and the New Testaments, this is the biblical witness. This is the expression of the cross. Jesus would say, do I look like I want you to grovel at your sin while I'm forgiving these people for putting me here in an instant? Does it look like I want you to grovel and crawl and beg for forgiveness? Does it look like I find it hard to love you, put myself through this? Does that look like it's difficult to love you? If it was difficult, I wouldn't be doing it. The fact that he does it tells you that he loves you with an unmeasurable amount of love that Enoch mentioned. Unquantifiable amount of love. If I give you myself, says Jesus, if I give you myself, how can you doubt that I will gladly give you everything else that you need? That you need. If God is for us, well, who can be against us? I mean, we sin like, you know, I'm not saying you should put your sin on show, right? Because that would be shameful. But I'm saying, don't let it drag you down. God is not like we think he is, some sort of heavenly hitman on his building, right, on an outpost with a sniper rifle trained upon you, just waiting, with an itching finger, waiting for you to slip up so that he can pull the trigger and end your miserable existence. And you might say, well, I deserve that because I'm useless. I'm a sinner. I'm making no progress here. I might as well be dead for all the good I do and all the good I am. If that's how we think about God, you have no idea what he really is. You don't know God if you're sitting there thinking he's waiting to slap you around the head and face because you sin. He's not. He's not. Listen to this, right? This is Ezekiel. I've not read the verses, but you can read them later. Ezekiel chapter 23. No, it's chapter 18, verses 23 and in verse 32. What does God say in there? If these passages are to be believed, and I think they probably are, given that they're under inspiration of the Holy Spirit, they clearly state that God takes no pleasure in the wicked dying. These are people who are wicked. These are people whom you might say, well, they deserve it. And God sometimes takes them out of existence. He says, this gives me no pleasure. I want everyone to love me back. I want everyone to win. I want everyone to overcome. All of us. He takes no pleasure in the wicked dying. He takes no pleasure. And there is no thought of you, no thought should come from you of him training a gun in your head because you sin. Matthew 23, this is remarkable. Matthew 23, right at the start, actually, I mean, the start of the chapter, right almost at the very end. And Jesus is having a debate with the religious elite of the day, right? It's quite a long discourse there. So if you've got one of those red letter Bibles, it almost burns you because of what he said, not just so much that it's indicating it's him that's speaking. And he tells them there, he says, you people, you're snakes, you're liars, you're hypocrites, you're sons of hell, you're murderers. Imagine saying that to the religious elite of the day. That's what Jesus called them. And then when you get to the end of the chapter, it doesn't end as you might expect it would end. Because if Jesus felt that, or how you think he would feel having said that, you would think that he would just slap them around the head and face, or bring down bolts of lightning from heaven and put them out of existence, right? But what does he actually say? He looks at them and his heart is broken because of them. He says, oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how I've longed to gather your people, like a hen gathers its chicks under its wings to protect them. This is what I really want for you, but you are unwilling. What we see with what Christ says, regardless of how the people are acting, his response tells us and shows us the full extent of God's heart towards humanity and towards sinners in general. This is what's on display here. Wow. The full love of Jesus Christ. People deriding him, people nailing him to crosses. He's calling them all sorts of names. And he says, you're breaking my heart. I just want to gather you and you want to live it. And another passage that Enoch read, listen to this, right? I'll not read the passage, but it was Romans chapter 5, verses 6 and 10. Remember what it says? Who did God die for? The lovely? The holy? No. God, well, who did Christ die for? Sorry. Christ died for the weak. He died for the ungodly. He died for the sinner. And he died for the enemy. All of this was you, he says. Yet still he came off his throne. Still he wrapped himself in skin. Still he became the incarnate one. Still he came among us. And still he died for us. And then he rescued us. In spite of all of that. Why? Because his heart is filled with love. He is love. There is no other way, no other thing that God could have done but what he did do. He wasn't stealing himself going, oh, this is a bit risky. No. When he did that, he was being himself. He was being himself. We don't think about it in those terms, do we? Oh, my. God thinks us precious. Listen, there's no denying that, is there? You just have to look at how he deals with us, what he says about us, what he does for us. No denying that God thinks us precious. And regardless of the awful cost of the cross and all of that stuff, he thinks it worthwhile to redeem us. Your heart says no. Your sin says no. The world says no. But God in Jesus on the cross and all of that stuff says yes. He says yes. He says yes. In forgiving our sin, you might not think this is true, but in forgiving our sin, God was being righteous. He wasn't doing a righteous thing. He wasn't setting us righteous, although we became righteous as a result. God was being righteous. That is to say, when God became man and man died on the cross and all of that, he was being righteous. He was doing the right thing. And if God is love and God is perfect, he'll always do the right thing. So what did the right thing mean? Becoming incarnate, dying on a cross. If that's what it took, that's what he was willing to do. He did the right thing. The act of love that we see on the cross and what we see in the life of Jesus Christ and how he deals with humanity is not an act. God didn't set aside, he didn't set aside his wrathful self like people think he was in the Old Testament. The Ezekiel passages bear that to be nonsense. He didn't set his wrathful self aside and then come as Jesus and then steal himself. Oh, I need to get through this. Like he's in a big hamster ball or something, not touching us because we're awful sinners. He didn't look at sinners and go, right, I think I'm okay. All the way. Right, okay, I can do this, I can do that. That's not Jesus. That's what we think Jesus is like when he comes in contact with sinners. Like, oh, it's not like that. He embraces us. He's knee deep, waist deep, chest deep, throat deep in our sin. And still he embraces us and goes through with it. He wasn't stealing himself a deal with sinners. What you see in Jesus Christ is what the Word capital W, the word John 1, eternally thought and felt. Take that home. The word eternally thought and felt the way that Jesus acted. That's absolutely right. This was Jesus simply being God. This was God simply being himself in the form of a man. Wow. Wow. In doing so, he was being righteous. He was doing the right thing. Eternally, ceaselessly doing the right thing. And in doing the right thing, I'm going to read a passage here that will prove it to you in case you don't believe me. But in doing the right thing, he demonstrated forgiveness. Listen to this, right? This is a very popular passage. We all know it. Romans chapter 3, 23 to verse 26. For all have sinned. Well, we know that's true. We've all fallen short of the glory of God, and we know that's true. And we're all justified freely by grace. Freely by grace. Nothing that you did, nothing that you can do. You know, mentioned it. None of that stuff. Jesus did it for you, freely, by grace. He did this through grace, he did this by his grace, through the redemption that came by Christ Jesus. God presented Christ as an atoning sacrifice, or a sacrifice of atonement, through the shedding of his blood, to be received by faith. That's our job, we just accept it, right? He did this. He did what? Well, I just told you. Paul just told you he did this. He became a sacrifice. He gave his blood. He saved us through his grace. He did this, and this is the words of Paul, to demonstrate his righteousness. Oh, wow. So all that time we were thinking Jesus was kind of, grinning and bearing it as he went. No, he was just doing the right thing all along. To demonstrate his righteousness. Because in his forbearance, he had left the sins committed beforehand unpunished. He did this to demonstrate his righteousness, to show that he was doing the right thing at this present time. Now, so as to be just, to be fair, to be just, and the one who justifies those who have faith in Jesus. In the death of Christ, a righteous God is expressing his love to us. A love that embraces the entire human family, John 3:16. His righteousness, whatever you might think of that, it doesn't get in the way of his loving us. He's not like, well, here I'm really righteous, you're really sinful. Well, I need to put that to the side somehow and then, no. When he comes to us as Jesus, he's doing the right thing. This is the very thing that brings him to love us. Imagine that. Imagine, look at humanity down through the years and look at the awful mess we've made of life, the awful mess we've made of the world, how we treat each other. And God, doing the right thing, loves us. How can that be? How can you get that amount of love, that degree of love? How does that even exist? Well, our love is flawed. We don't really understand it. I mean, probably never will, said somebody earlier. Listen, the cross did not enable God to love us. The cross was the demonstration of his love for us. Isn't that amazing? He says, you don't believe me that I love you? Let me show you. Off with the deity, on with the humanity, death, even death on a cross, hanging naked for us. 90 more seconds and I'm done. Conclusion then. Though the world says no, though your heart says no, though your sin says no, these great obstacles in the road to our journey, what does God say? God says yes, a holy and righteous yes. In him, sin is a done deal. It's off the table regarding anything other than it's dead. Sin is a done deal, for he has overcome. And as the song says, how great thou art, there is a day coming when he will lead us home. This has all got a point to it. The obstacles that we face, that we circumvent, circumnavigate, whatever, every day, are going to end. And Christ will come, as the song says, with a shout, not a whimper or a whisper, A shout of acclamation. And I looked up what that word meant. The word acclamation means an enthusiastic approval. He stands and goes, yes, we've made it. The time has come to bring you home. Yes. And what do? First of all, we hear the trumpet blast. Like our brothers of old, they go rushing in there. The perishable, fitted with the imperishable. The mortal, fitted with immortality. And the verse says in 1 Corinthians 15:52, that when all of that happens, then shall come to pass the saying that is written, death has been swallowed up in victory. Death has been swallowed up in God's holy yes. Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting? It's null and void because he's overcome it. Then we will bow with humble adoration and there proclaim, my God, how great you are. Thanks be to God who gives us the victory through Jesus Christ our Lord. Sin is a done deal. Believe it and get on with it. Thank you.
Let's stand and sing number 869. Thank you, John. Great lesson. After this, Graham will come forward and close us out for the day. 869. Marching to Zion. Come we that love the Lord, and let our joy be known. Join in a song with sweet accord. Join in a song with sweet accord. And thus around the throne, and thus around the throne. We're marching to Zion. Beautiful, beautiful Zion, we're marching to Zion, the beautiful city of God. Let those refuse to sing who never hear our God, but children of the heavenly King, but children of the heavenly King, may speak. Rejoice gloriously, rejoice abroad. We're marching to Zion, beautiful, beautiful Zion. We're marching upward to Zion, the beautiful city of God. There hills and thousand sacred streets. Before we reach the heavenly fields, before we reach the heavenly fields, or walk the golden streets, or walk the golden streets. We're marching to Zion, beautiful, beautiful Zion. We're marching upward to Zion, the beautiful city of God. And let our songs abound and every tear be dry. We're marching through Emmanuel's ground. We're marching through Emmanuel's ground to fare us on worlds on high, to fare us on high. We're marching to Zion, beautiful, beautiful Zion. We're marching upward to Zion, the beautiful city of God. Then sings my soul, my Savior to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God to thee. How great thou art.